kids' behavior is a reflection of us as adults, whether it's our entire society or just how the teacher is interacting. So when we're seeing an influx of behavior issues, of vaping, of addiction, of truancy and stuff, that's a reflection of things that we're not addressing as adults because we're the models, right? We're showing them how to exist and interact with each other. So I do think we're struggling right now so much in schools with behavior because we're struggling so much with as adults with behavior, right? With even getting along with each other, being able to survive. So it's a reminder to adults to have a paradigm shift from these kids are just so bad, teaching is just so hard to ooh, what is it? What, like curiosity, what's happening here? How can I help model something better for the kids?
Welcome to Purposeful Empathy, a show that's dedicated to amplifying the voices of people from across the globe who understand that the world needs more empathy and are doing something about it. This season is devoted to the power of empathy in education. Meet 12 visionary leaders from the Transformative Educational Leadership Fellowship Program and learn how they are bringing meaningful change to their schools. You won't want to miss a single episode, so hit the subscribe button now. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the show. Welcome to a new episode of Purposeful Empathy. Today I'm joined by Lex Rodriguez, an educator, curriculum designer, and passionate advocate for culturally sustaining, trauma-informed, and healing-centered social emotional learning, otherwise known as SEL. With more than 15 years experience, Lex has been at the forefront of developing SEL frameworks that uplift BIPOC and LGBTQ plus youth, that champion restorative justice practices, and that center community-driven approaches to well-being. Lex is also a PhD candidate in critical studies in education who weaves together research, advocacy, and hands-on implementation to drive meaningful systemic change. From leading professional development for educators to designing digital learning platforms and policy-driven SEL programs, she's also committed to making SEL not just accessible, but humanizing and transformative and relevant to historically marginalized communities. This season, I'm exploring the power of empathy in education, and I've invited Lex to be a guest because that's precisely what she practices and exemplifies. So welcome to the show, Lex.
Thank you. Thank you. Excited to be here.
And I'm excited to have you. And when we first met and I saw this beautiful background, for those of you who are watching it listening to it on a podcast, she's going to explain. But there's just this stunning array of books and bookshelves and art and masks and drawers. Would you share for a few minutes about your space? And then also maybe, besides that stunning and spectacular bio, tell me a little bit about you, to color in some of the extra nuances.
Yeah. Well, I think, if I could pick a Disney princess from when I was little, right? Not any of the newer, more inclusive ones, but Belle was my favorite. And, that inspired this bookshelf with a ladder on it. So I had to have it somewhere in my house and it fits in here. And then also, when I was young, my mom, both my parents worked nonstop. So I was a latchkey kid for sure. And I'd often get dropped off at the library, which was across the street, while my mom finished work. So the drawers are in spirit of that. Not even all of them are filled. I just, one day maybe they will be, but I like having like the old card catalog situation going on.
I love that. I love that. Well, anyways, it's spectacular. And it reminds me that you are also an artist and you also did some amazing videos during COVID reading children's books. So if we have time, we'll unpack all of that. But there's so much to cover. There's so much to cover today, Lex. So right off the bat, let's understand, for those of you who are not familiar with the term social emotional learning, why SEL is so important. So how would you explain what SEL is about?
I think my elevator pitch is that SEL allows us to learn how we fit into the world. So how we interact, how we, I don't know, I guess how we view ourselves, how other people view us, and how to handle that, and how to, not appropriately, but whatever feels good with us to learn yeah, interact with the world positively and
Hmm.
effectively.
And I'd be curious to know what brought you to this work. So do you want to share some pivots in your life or some moments, highlight some things that happened that maybe would explain why you're so passionate about it?
Yeah, I think when I was in the classroom teaching SEL for specifically, like that was the only curriculum that I taught. And when I would introduce myself to the kids, I would say, again, grew up as a latchkey kid. There was a lot of other things that went on, and I wished that adults would see that and like, intervene and help and whatnot. So, whew, Lord, sorry. So I am drawn to this work because it helps me be the adult that I needed when I was a kid.
Oh, wow. And when you when you introduce yourself to students and give them sort of a little sneak peek into who you are, how do you think that changes your relationship with them? Like what unfolds as a result of you sharing a bit?
Yeah. And I can say how that shifted, right? Because at the beginning of the my tenure doing that role, it was very like bland, like, oh yeah, I'm an artist, I'm biracial, these are the things I like to do, blah blah blah. These are main things that I see in the world. And through my journey with SEL and a fellowship called Creating Freedom Movements, I was introduced to access needs, which is just coming when you're in a group together with more than like, I don't know, it could be with just one other person, but it's really just sharing with the other person what you need to be present in the space. So the first year where that was in my lexicon of knowledge, I did that with my students, and I was like, hey, I actually have never shared this with really employers, with people I'm not close with, but I'm like extremely ADHD. Like things that normal people can do are very difficult for me. So like, yeah, our library got taken away. I have curated this whole big library. That's gonna be a mess, y'all, and I need your help, right? And so from that moment on, the kids did everything. They were like, "Oh yeah, we got you. We're gonna clean. We're gonna organize everything. We're gonna figure out what systems work best for our notebooks." And so it was different for each class. So it really helped build that community. And yeah, it helped them see me as a human. We shared power and responsibility in the room, and it just all worked a lot better, right? Like I wasn't stressed out. I didn't have to do anything to clean, right? That wasn't extra job responsibility for me anymore.
I think it kind of invites the observation that I don't know if you are, I don't even want to use the word victim to this, but like I am guilty of not asking for help enough.
Hmm.
And your story of asking for help opened up this beautiful opportunity for the students to step up. And it was like, wow. And they were almost happy to do it and for you to just sort of like walk through the next stage. And so I don't know, I'm sensing, even though we're only minutes into the call, it's so helpful when you're in a space of learning to just be real. But there's so many barriers to that because people have social masks up. There's certain sort of expectations of what a classroom is like, in terms of expectations of what the students are like and what the teachers are like. And I guess when you were earlier saying SEL is really about like how do we navigate the world together so that we can all thrive together, it's really about sort of humanizing spaces, right?
Hmm. And each other, right? Because I mean, the kids went around and did that. So not only did they like learn to what I needed for help, they learned what each other needed, right? So you're humanizing not just the teacher, the space, but the kids themselves. So it builds, yeah, a way stronger classroom community for sure.
Okay, so if we build on that example, because that was just one anecdote that you just threw out, I wonder if you could share other moments where you've witnessed SEL open up stuff for whether it's the teaching faculty or students.
Yes.
And I'll whip out some tissues in case I need them.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of one specifically, which is it was the year of the pandemic. Maybe it was when we came back, that first year where some people were in school, some people weren't. We were, and we had whenever somebody got COVID, you got sent home, right? And for like 4 weeks. And I was teaching sixth graders at the time, and they just couldn't stop passing it to each other, right? So we were being sent home all the time. And at one point, I think I was questioning, like, holy, it's so many interruptions. Like, I don't know if I've been effective, if I've been able to create the community that I always strive for and that I've been able to in the past. And one day, I think I was feeling like particularly low about it. And their homeroom teacher came and he was like, I have been listening to like what the kids say when they come back from your class and like the community you built and the safe space and the ability to talk about their identities. And I I don't know, it empowered me to come to you because I want at least one person in this school to know who I am, and it feels like you are a safe person to do that. So, yeah, he shared some stuff about his personal life and his identity with me, and it was beautiful. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not failing as badly as I thought I was.
Teachers tend to be really hard on themselves, I've heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you just mentioned COVID, and we don't really want to remind ourselves of sort of what that was all about, but I still think it's worth hearing from teachers what the fallout of COVID was, and that we still need to pay attention to as parents, as teachers, as administrators, like what's going on? What do you think in sort of with a bit of rear view mirror now, but what would you have to say there?
Um, well, I think I talk about this a lot with the trainings and advice I give to staff members that the kids' behavior is a reflection of us as adults, whether it's our entire society or just how the teacher is interacting. So when we're seeing an influx of behavior issues, of vaping, of addiction, of truancy and stuff, that's a reflection of things that we're not addressing as adults because we're the models, right? We are what we're showing them how to exist and interact with each other. So I do think we're struggling right now so much in schools with behavior because we're struggling so much with as adults with behavior, right? With even getting along with each other, being able to survive. So it's a reminder to adults to like have a paradigm shift from these kids are just so bad, teaching is just so hard to like, ooh, what is it? What like curiosity, like what's happening here? How can I help model something better for the kids?
Mm. I love that. It's very profound. And another follow-up, I'm thinking, okay, what if you were talking to a cynic or a critic of all this SEL stuff? Or like, what are you talking about? Like talking about our feelings and all this, like this is a competitive world. Kids have to do well in school. We're falling behind. They need to get great grades in order to move to the next level. What is your feedback to that?
How's that working for you? So I think it's I approach everything with a sense of curiosity, right? That is what drives my empathy, I think, because if I wasn't curious at all, then I would walk up to any situation and just write people off, right? I probably, if I didn't have any sense of curiosity, I'd just walk away from that person. Be like, I don't have time for this, right? But yeah, I think it is sort of a game in my ADHD brain to like uncover how they get to these moments of intense, like, what are you holding on to? Like, why are you so angry? Like what happened for you to like hold on to this competitive so much and like lose sight of anyone else in your reality and caring for the rest of humanity? So yeah, it would just be a lot of questions. It would be a lot of questions. Well, how do you think this could hurt? Like if people understood how their reactions impact other people's reactions, how is that a bad thing? Right? So it'd be a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if we could take 1 second to extrapolate out to the larger society. We're taping this, it's March of 2025. There's a lot of stuff going on in your country and now my country as a result of your country. And um, I don't know, what do you think people need to understand about the sacred nature of being in a place for learning when you're with kids that are just evolving into who they're going to be and the space they're going to take up in the world. Like, what's the meta message we need to bring home?
I'm gonna stick. I think this is gonna be a thread throughout everything is this sense of curiosity. Because I think what we've I don't know. In all these conversations about what's going on, a lot of people are like, we're doomed, right? Everything is failing, systems aren't working, all these things are happening. We're very, apocalyptic. Um, and if we come at these things with curiosity, we'd be able to like uncover truths, right? Of what is all these things have been set up by design, right? Nothing in America right now is working poorly. It's working perfectly how it was designed, which is very depressing for sure. But when I bring that to a teacher realm in our education system, and really like view everything that I, as having Puerto Rican identity, really care about, like culturally sustaining stuff and what we need to get there. It is a sense of wanting to know, and wanting to uncover the truth because sure we have a bad education system or it's not up to par and it's really not the teacher's fault, but all the different things that are put on them, all the different expectations. And we aren't taught from a very young age in this country anymore by design to critically think about things, to see the different levels of impact of one policy or another, or to even uncover the truth that is right now that everything is by design, right? Like this is by design. Um, so if we approach our teaching and our practice with curiosity, it's like, okay, how can I make this better? And it's shifting the responsibility to yourself instead of like an outside world or the kids or people's expectations to myself of, ooh, what can I research today? What can I learn about today that would help me interact with this better? And then that would also inspire like, oh, I want to share this knowledge with my friends and my people. And I think because I learned this from a very amazing professor. Her name is Dr. Anita Ware, that real change takes time. It's not overnight, and anything that is overnight isn't going to last. Real change is conversations, real change is time spent really challenging ideas and belief systems. And that can only happen if we engage and we sit at the table, which we're not doing right now, right? And there's so many people who are just like, no, I don't. You support this person? Absolutely not. You're written off in my book completely, right?
Hmm.
Which blocks that empathy. Because if you have empathy, if you teach empathy in schools, then it's pretty hard to tell people you should hate each other, right? It's really hard to pit people against each other and create all these inner um fights and dialogues and stuff if we have a good sense of empathy and understanding.
Well, I was going to move to a conversation about culturally sustaining, but since we're talking about empathy, it's come onto my radar recently that a certain someone in power has a belief and has spoken publicly about this idea that empathy is the downfall of human civilization. Um, and it's wild to me that people who are in positions of power have that opinion of empathy. Could you make the case for why empathy is so important?
Yeah, yeah. It's hard to pivot away from not being negative on that one, right? Of yes, okay. Empathy is okay, sorry, let me gather this question a little bit.
Mhm.
Okay, I guess in everything, we are not meant to be alone, right? And that was very evident. We all were forced into acknowledging that during COVID, that we are not built to be in isolation. And so saying empathy is the end all to civilization is kind of ridiculous. If we were just proven that's not true, that we can't not care for each other, that we can't not be in community with each other. It physically, on a molecular level, impacts us negatively. So, you know, spoken like a true narcissist, it's very like just very selfish in a way, and not to say that I don't even know where I was gonna go. It's very silly, I think. I don't know where how else to answer that. Of we need humanity, we need each other, we need community. And a lot of what our system in America, why it's breaking down, is because systematically we've erased community spaces. We've made it almost impossible for you to have like an outside work life because you have to work so hard just to make ends meet. And so yeah, people are angry because we don't have any support from each other. So we're saying empathy is the end all be all, but we're also seeing that it is the end all be all for health, for like wellness, right? Um, so yeah.
Yeah,
I
the absence
also think
thereof.
about Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Sorry to interrupt you. And there's a part where he talks about when the people in power are losing that power, they will do the most horrendous things. They will say the most horrendous things. They will try to enact things that just erase everybody and really harmful to even themselves to hold on to that power. And I think he is an example of that. That comment is an example of that. That you see in the face of all this in the 6 weeks, so much community resistance and moving away from whatever idea he thinks is America. Um, that these things are coming out, they're spilling out. And so it's actually kind of hopeful. Like, all right, dig your own grave, dude. We see what you're doing.
I hope that's the case. So, okay, there's a few threads that I want to pick up on. Maybe, I don't know if they're misconceptions about SEL or not, but I think maybe you're really tuned into how we can shift the narrative to make it more humanizing, decolonized. And you use the word culturally sustaining, which is interesting because I've only heard of culturally sensitive, but culturally sustaining sounds like next level. So, how can we do that?
Yeah, culturally sensitive. I don't think I've heard that. That is a new one. Um, okay, so I think some common misconceptions are that SEL is about like soft skills, just relational skills, which isn't true. And I'm like a little weary about going into what I think SEL does as a whole, just in the political climate it is, but whatever, we're gonna go with it. It gives kids and anyone who's learning about it like advocacy skills, right? Like I'm teaching you how to advocate for yourself and for your community. So, um, like giving you the skills to reach for your own power and to thrive, in your whole humanness. So I don't think that's soft skills. I think that's very amazing skills. And that SEL should be neutral, which is very silly because I don't think emotions can be neutral because I don't think that we live in a vacuum without interacting with any kind of conflict, right? So I don't think it could be neutral in any way. And it's a very privileged perspective, especially when you're dealing with like multiracial student populations, right? Each student, even if they are all one identity, are having different experiences. Their brains are interpreting things differently. So a one size fit all neutral SEL program is not going to do anything, which is what we've seen, right? I'm on a research team now that is looking at that of like what is effective and what's not. And across the board, teachers are like, I I don't think my kids care about like baseball SEL. Like sure, it was like a way in, but they went with that and it was very surface level and it just lost them within like the first couple sessions. Because if it's not tied to our realities, if it's not tied to our lived experience, what what are we doing? Like how do I apply this if it doesn't make sense in my outside of the classroom world? Um, and then another one is that and I'll explain this in depth, is that SEL is a like a way to change school culture, that it positively changes school culture. And it's a misconception because administrators and principals and even teachers will see this SEL program that says it does all these things, that it has huge impact on students and it has huge impact on school culture and discipline stuff and retention. Um, but then they don't look into why, right? And so, yes, a program can do those things. I've been a part of that program for 7 years. It does amazing things. But if you just give someone the curriculum and they just read it and just go from that it's not going to have the same impact, right? The impact is that what we're doing as a staff in an organization is saying identity is central to SEL. We need to uplift their identities. We need to teach how to acceptance and empathy and give them the language to talk to each other about their experiences without reacting in anger or judgment or things that their parents have told them, right? Like that they don't necessarily believe, but it's all that they've heard. So to challenge those ideas. So it's like going deeper into just what's on paper in our classrooms. So yeah, does it change? Yes, but it's the level of commitment to looking at students and teachers really as a whole person, as their whole identity, their whole lived experience. So then we can learn how to interact with each other. Going back to the like access need situation of what do we each need to be here? And how do we learn how to talk to each other about that?
As I'm listening to you talk about that, I'm questioning whether or not SEL educators by de facto need to have certain lived experiences or identity markers in order to be legit. Or, okay, so tell me why.
Yeah, I think at one point when I was preparing for this, I had written a lot about a one size fit all situation and that it's bad. But I think I've shifted away from that. And because I do think that if we learn how to love each other and empathy, right? And have empathy and understanding and like again, curiosity, I don't think it matters, right? I think the problem we're facing is that there is a really intense holding on to whiteness right now. Maybe not right now, almost always, but I also do think after George Floyd, there was this kind of sense of a racial reckoning, and the books were off the charts, and like everyone was engaging with it. And then now we are here where we're at right now which is a huge backswing the other direction, a huge grasping onto whiteness and power. And that's because one, it's too painful to face, I think, to like admit that things that we've learned our entire lives are harmful, right? And to face those things. So, um, if there is a willingness to move through that and to keep going on that and to acknowledge, I think that is all kids want, right? Is an acknowledgement that you see who I am, right? That you see I exist and that you respect my experiences as a whole instead of trying to deny it further, which I think that's what we're doing, right? Systemically in the Oval Office by saying no DEI stuff.
I was just going to ask that. I was just going to say it must properly hurt teachers who care about the well-being of kids, who want to, who are seeing their whole selves now being told explicitly, you can't do that anymore.
Mhm.
So what's happening to teachers? How are teachers managing that? How are you managing that? What are yours? How are you taking care of yourself?
Um, you know, I think we're still processing through that. I think it's about creating new spaces to do that in outside of the education system. I know a lot of teachers, um, because this isn't new to like states like Florida or Texas, or, there's certain states where this isn't, no one's blinking an eye because it's already been like this. So there are teachers in those spaces who are creating like fugitive spaces. In that term, I'm trying to look. Okay, I don't have the book in here because I don't remember the author of that book, but it is creating classrooms, closing your door and still doing what you're going to do, and willing to take that risk, right? Or changing practices a little bit. What's silly is that on a normal basis is just what it means to be a good human being. So why we're demonizing these things is very wild and almost impossible to police. Like, I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting next couple of months to see how this really plays out. But I think the teachers who care are still doing it, are still
Right.
showing it way.
Yeah, there'll be resistance, right?
Yeah.
So, in addition to the humanizing of young people and decolonizing spaces and being culturally sustaining, you actually believe that SEL needs to evolve to center BIPOC and LGBTQ plus students. Wonder why and what would that look like?
Yeah. Think of it. Remember those toys we used to play with when we're babies where you have to put the square in the square hole and whatnot? And so we can view SEL right now in this country as us trying to do that, right? We're trying to learn how to fit into these pegs. Um, and by shifting this like one size fits all narrative, by cutting the space bigger so that it doesn't matter what shape you are, you're still gonna have access to whatever's on the other side. You're still gonna fit. Um, so we can have a one size fits all situation, but it needs the person, the humanity, the vision of what's right that we're building that one size fits all on needs to shift. And if we shift to BIPOC and LGBT communities, it's a more diverse experience. So we're getting a better benefit from all these lived experiences, all this cultural wealth, all this knowledge, all this community of knowledge that we have built throughout time and space, right? Because we still exist because whiteness hasn't erased people of color or LGBTQ plus people. Like we still exist. So we do have a really strong knowledge base of how to withstand systems of oppression. So we can learn a whole lot more than if we are trying to just fit this little square peg. Because it also people of color are the global majority, right? So that's also a new term is like state saying students of the global majority. So it like points to the reality that while there is still oppression, we still are a lot. We still have survived. Um, yeah, does that answer the question? How do we do it in classrooms?
So what I think I'm getting from that is if we expand the one size fits all to, let's say, 80% of the student body, and we leave the 20% out, we think we're still meeting the needs of 80%. So isn't that a good thing? And you're saying, no, no. If we design the space for the 20% who are on the margins, typically, right? Then by de facto, that space will be inclusive.
Hmm. Yes, but the numbers are off, right? Because we're designing curriculum and everything for, let's say, a 10%, while the 80% are being left out
Oh,
in this country. So that is where, or 90%, sorry, that math wasn't right. So that's where I'm saying the shift is. You're having all this 90% experience. Of course, they're going to benefit, right? It's not even leaving them out. We're creating a curriculum that is inclusive to everybody so that we are coming to it from a place of curiosity. You're learning about different cultures. You're having this cultural exchange, which we research all the time about being a positive thing, right? Having different um divisions and everything isn't actually helpful to majority of people. I say that and then immediately want to just for anyone listening in America fully acknowledge that in this country, Black students were very much more successful in segregated schools than they are in white schools because of a whole lot of
marginalization.
stuff. But I don't want to say that. Yeah. So just want to fully acknowledge that.
But I loved having the reaction that I felt somatically when you corrected the numbers because it was like the here I am thinking you're speaking to the vast majority of students and then you're talking about the outliers. But no, you're saying there's no such thing as the outliers. They are the majority in
Mhm.
our spaces, in our schools, and that's the thing that we need to understand. So
Mhm.
why do you think people are so afraid of that?
Because of whiteness, right? And holding on to power. So I don't think I mean, in white communities, right? And want to also acknowledge my proximity to whiteness. I am white and am Puerto Rican, and so can see things from not both perspectives because whiteness is just insane and harmful to everybody, right? So it feels like there's a constant battle of colonized and colonizer in my body all the time. Um, and anyway, I see that things are changing, right? And I can understand how hard it is to face these truths, to face how evil this country has been, right? We have done a lot of really bad things. And it's hard to admit that you're part of that and that your ancestors and that your parents and that your grandparents were a part of this. And I think that people want to not face it and not care about anything that we're doing to other communities 'cause it's not my community, right? I don't have to care about them as long as mine's not getting hurt.
Hmm. Now, those of you who are listening and watching and are following this conversation and nodding in agreement, understand the language that you're using around whiteness. But for those of you who are curious and your maybe antenna went up and maybe a degree of oh, what you talking about? Defensiveness even. How can we unpack this? I mean, really sincerely, Lex, how can we unpack the idea of whiteness that it is not specific to a person that is racist
Hmm.
which is what it oftentimes becomes, right? I'm a white person. If you're saying the whiteness is the problem, I'm white. And I'm not getting defensive by it, but I'm just sort of like rolling with it. How can we really, what are the gentle ways that we can say, hey, we're not calling you out, although we are, because we want you to step up and we want you to sort of create space and share power and not only own the power and recognize that you benefit from the power. But before we can get into the you, we can get into the sort of the historical thing of whiteness. Like, what's that all about? What can we say about that?
I think it's kind of a setting of expectations at the beginning of these conversations that anything that I am saying right now, I would like you to know that I want to challenge the idea and not you as a human being. So all these concepts are us grappling with, exploring, challenging a belief, right? Or a system, an idea, not you as a person. So let's separate the topic of discussion from me as a person, and that we're going into this together to explore, battle, whatever, challenge this, not each other. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
That's
So
that's a
that,
huge piece of help to this
mhm,
conversation, I think, for people who want to engage sincerely. So, as a concept, can we break down what is whiteness?
mhm.
It's more than just the color of somebody's skin.
Yeah, it's the model for what is right, the model for what is acceptable. In this country, it's the what you strive to be, right? It's this is the only thing that we're going to accept being here in this position, any position of power, of I wouldn't say fame. So there's a yeah, anyways, it's a whole different podcast on that. But yeah, it's just the model of what is good. And we've done in this country a lot of studies of when do we learn that? And it's pretty young, right? So that's the conversation right now about why we can't make white kids uncomfortable and teach about slavery. So we're going to take away slavery out of the curriculum, which is like, okay, okay, right? Like what? When we know that as early as like 2 or 3, kids of color already are aware, are have already been signaled that their skin color, their identity is not as good as the white kids in their classroom or in their preschool or in just in life, right? They've already learned that. So sure, you don't want to feel guilty in that one lesson about slavery when kids of the global majority are dealing with it every moment of every day. So yeah,
Hmm.
I forget what the question was.
You answered it. What is
Okay.
whiteness? But you got there. Wow. Okay, 2 questions left, and thank you, Lex. I knew this was going to be a really juicy conversation. Um, I've asked you what you think empathy is. I wonder if what you think the role of empathy and belonging specifically play in education.
I think it's everything really. Okay, so over the last 3 years, I'd been working on this opioid prevention curriculum for teens, which really had to shift because a lot of communities that I met with to create this curriculum were like, we don't have an issue with opioids. Like we have addiction stuff, but not opioids. And so it had to shift to talking about every just addiction in general. And so in that research, in that those community conversations with kids, what the main driver towards trying drugs, towards being addicted, unable to get away from it, at the center of that was there a sense of belonging? Was there anybody who cared about them um enough to see the changes or to see what was impacting to help people out of that? So yeah, think that is, again, what's necessary in schools, that when you're having behavior issues, when I'm having behavior issues in classrooms and like someone's doing something or whatever, I know that's a reflection of me that I haven't created or haven't met the needs of that student. And I can see it because I have built that sense of belonging in the class that they're acting out because they're no longer feeling they fit into it, right? And so as a whole, what we're seeing with students of the global majority in our school systems is that they're acting out because they don't feel like they belong. One, teachers are being super disciplinary, and those actions are affected by our implicit biases, right? So things that we're not even aware of all the time, and they're picking on students, right? I'm not even going to go into that, but it's the sense of belonging of being seen, because if you feel seen and you feel belonging, you don't want to you don't want to mess anything up. You want to learn, you're engaged, you want to hear what the people are saying and want to learn from each other. There's this book called I Won't Learn From You. I forget the author, but this is what he talks about. Like when you're struggling with particular students, it's not the student's fault, right? It's not anyone's fault but our own. That we're doing something that is making our kids react this way and our school systems react this way. So, yeah, I think it's a challenge to get to that situation of empathy, of learning to have empathy with ourselves, right? When something is going on, not to be like, oh, doomsday, I suck, I'm a terrible teacher, and be super hard on ourselves, but have empathy, like, okay, I can take a deep breath. I can take a moment to understand what is going on and then process through that in whatever ways, whether that's, okay, hey, you guys, that didn't work. That lesson sucked. I could tell. Let's kind of talk through how it could be better, right? In the future, giving student voice. So that's how empathy and belonging can show up in the classroom is, ooh, this isn't working. Let's work on it together, right? And share that power with students, which is a hard thing for teachers to do. And then also, never mind, that train went on without me.
Ooh, you must be very, very, very beloved in your classroom, I am sure. And earlier you mentioned, earlier in the conversation, you even hesitated when you before using the word love. But why can't we accept that if love is present in a place for learning, learning will just happen, like because that's creatures as humans, as a species, we want to learn, we want to grow, we want to develop. And why wouldn't we just create the circumstances or the environment for that to happen, right? Sense of
That's
belonging, how beautiful. Why wouldn't we want that? Why wouldn't we want that?
correct. Well, why would I could give you the real answer of why in this country it's not wanted, right? But I guess I hesitated earlier, and this is my own stuff, right? Of one, I work outside of the system. I don't have to follow the same rules as a licensed public school teacher, even though I was working in a public school, right? I had my own classroom within it, but I wasn't paid by the district. So I had a lot more freedom to talk about all these things, and I guess another level of that is in trying to find where I fit in whiteness, right? Of that side of me is the hesitant side, and then my Puerto Rican side, which is so much community and so much love, and how I show up with kids is like I'm gonna create this system. We're gonna do these things to show that we care and love with each other no matter what. But when talking about it in public spaces, it's like, how much of that do I want to give to the academy or to the lexicon, right? Like, but or hold that to myself. I don't know. Because how much is going to be criticized? Right now, that's where I'm at of me and this administration. Everything about me and what I stand for and what I research and what I talk about is being demonized and cut. So it's like, whew, okay, what am I willing to put myself at risk for? And I don't know what yet.
Mm. I feel you. That is kind of heartbreaking because you're so passionate and so clearly concerned about, young people's well-being and their flourishing. Wow. Yeah, I feel that. Um, as a last question, Lex, I usually end my podcast conversations by asking my guests the same question, and it's of a personal nature. And I wonder if you would be willing to share a time in your life when you were on the receiving end of empathy and what that meant for you.
Yeah. Um, I'm like going through a lot without trying not to cry. Huh. Okay. I think there is a lot going on in my personal life. Ooh, Lord, with my mother, right? And so I think there have been a lot of like my mother-in-law, my family in Puerto Rico who really just held me in some of these really intense moments. So yeah, I think yeah, it meant the world, right? Having a place to go where because I'm in Colorado, right? And all my dad's family is in Puerto Rico. So it's hard, one, being away from the ocean, and then two, being away from I'm alone here. I don't have any family in Denver. So yeah, it feels like a cocoon of love, right? Of a warm blanket when yeah, there's a lot when being alive is a battle every day.
Thank you for sharing with such vulnerability, Lex, because the reason why I'm very attached to this question, so in your case, I never know what I'm going to hear. And oftentimes there's tears with the guest, with myself. And it's always a reminder to people who are watching and listening to say, hey, guys, like, look, empathy is so vital and it makes such a difference. And we couldn't possibly even fathom how much of a difference it makes in other people's lives, just little acts that we do. Let's just turn up the volume of empathy in our lives. Like that's just sort of my go-to sentence. But in your specific case, you sharing what came up for me in a big way is that here you are pursuing your PhD, you're an advocate, you're articulate, you're like, making political commentary throughout, you're like, slamming the questions out the door, you're really like on top of this podcast conversation. And then the question of like, that opened up this moment where you shared a little bit of yourself is happening to everybody on the planet. Everybody's walking around with complex feelings about something. They're having a good day one day, but they're having a really rough day another day. And we just don't ever get the chance to see that unless we give ourselves permission to just enter that for a bit. And so I think for me, this moment is thank you for letting me see that and know that. And I send you love and I hope things get better really quickly for your mom or that you find peace and solace in the process, whatever you're going through. And I'm so grateful for this family that's an ocean away, giving you love. And at the same time, let's remember that when we're bumping into people all at the grocery store, on the street, like driving and, like, gosh, we just need to be kinder to each other because everybody's carrying some stuff.
And curious, right? And to be curious with each other instead of immediately jumping down people's throat, being like, hmm, how'd you get there?
Yeah.
Where'd you get that idea from? Right? So it does, it's a huge stress reliever too when you approach with curiosity instead of anger.
And you said that would be the thread, and you brought it all the way to the end of the podcast. So, Lex, let me just thank you. I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody who's been watching and listening. And we'll see you next week at Purposeful Empathy.
If you know someone who would benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Post the link to your socials and hit the subscribe button now. The world needs more empathy, and you have an important role to play.